Hello people, in this lecture we're gonna see what is and how to implement clean architecture. Clean architecture is a software design philosophy introduced by Robert C. Martin. Its main goal is to make your application independent of framework, UI, database, or any external systems. These allow you to build software that is maintainable, scalable, and easy to test. What is clean architecture? Clean architecture organizes code into layers, with strict dependencies flowing inward. As its core, the business logic, the heart of the app, is isolated and not dependent on frameworks, database, or UI. Clean architecture is a layered structure. It has four layers. It has a domain layer, the core of your application. It will not depend of any of these other layers. The for layer will depend from these three layers. The services layers will depend of infrastructure and domain layer, and the infrastructure layer will depend of core layer. But core layer will not depend of anything. It's the business logic of your application. It contains the models and the rules. This layer is the most stable and should not depend of anything else. An example, let's take our application as an example. An order, a user, a dish entity with a business logic, such as validating an order. Infrastructure layer, it deals with external systems like databases, file systems, or APIs. As an example, we can say repository for fetching or saving user or order data. The service layer, it defines the use cases and application logic. An example could be managing the creation of an order, create order use case. And an interface, it handles the UI interactions. It could be a web application, an API, etc. Example, a controller in the web app that display orders to a user. Why use clean architecture? Clean architecture helps in tackling common challenges like changing requirements. It's easy to replace database, modify the UI, or switch frameworks without impacting core logic. Testability. Since core logic is isolated, you can test it without relying on UI or database connections. Code maintainability. Clean boundaries between layers prevent tightly coupled code, making debugging and updates easier. In our project, imagine you need to switch from SQL Server to MongoDB or integrate with a new API. With clean architecture, it will just impact the infrastructure layer. The services, the interface, the domain layer will be untouched. Let's see examples using our future project. An example of entity that we've already seen in the past lecture is user order, dishes, and categories. Example, the order entity might include logic for verifying the status of an order, if it's pending, if it's delivered. Infrastructure layer, the repositories and external systems. It handles the database and file storage. An example could be the order repository fetches orders from the database. In a case we were going to use SQL Server, an entity framework. Services, it defines the workflow like creating an order or searching for dishes. As an example, we can have a place order use case that interacts with the order repository to persist the data. And the web app, the controllers to handle requests, the views, and everything we've already learned throughout this course. As an example, the order controller processes HTTP requests to place or retrieve orders. In the next lecture, we're going to create the entity layer. So we're going to create our class for user, for order, for dishes, and categories. So see you again in the next lecture.